Now get 50% off brake pads and shoes at Meineke.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Brianna Keeler in for Randy Kay, and here are 5 stories that we're watching this morning. The Taliban says it was sending a message to Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel. He was in Kabul today when a suicide bomber attacked the Afghan Ministry of Defense. 9 people were killed. Hagel, who was not injured, is on his first official overseas trip as Defense Secretary. And at number 2, look at this crazy image from Ohio. This is a dump truck hanging off a bridge in Cleveland after it rolled over. Details on the accident still coming into us, but thankfully no injuries have been reported. The embalmed body of Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez will remain in a glass casket on public display forever. That's right, forever. World leaders from Iran, Cuba, and dozens of other nations attended a state funeral for Mr. Chavez yesterday. Following the funeral, Mr. Chavez's protege, Vice President Nicolas Maduro, was sworn in as interim president until a new election. No trial date has been set for Osama bin Laden's son-in-law, who's pleaded not guilty to terror charges. Prosecutors say he conspired to kill Americans as part of bin Laden's al-Qaeda network and had spent most of his time since the September 11th attacks in Iran. U.S. officials arrested him February 28th in Jordan. Delta Airlines is pushing back against a new rule that lets passengers carry small pocket knives on airplanes. CEO Richard Anderson says lifting the knife ban, which was put in place after 9/11, isn't worth the risk. And the president of a second flight attendants union now also says the change, quote, makes no sense. Federal authorities say the new rule brings the U.S. in line with international standards. It will take effect on April 25th. An op-ed piece in the Washington Post Friday still getting a lot of buzz this morning. In it, former President Bill Clinton urges the Supreme Court to overturn the Defense of Marriage Act, legislation that he signed himself into law in 1996. It defines marriage as a legal union between a man and a woman. Mr. Clinton writes, the justices must decide whether it is consistent with the principles of a nation that honors freedom, equality, and justice above all, and is therefore constitutional. As the president who signed the act into law, I have come to believe that DOMA is contrary to those principles and, in fact, incompatible with our Constitution. Joining me now to talk about this, CNN contributor Maria Cardona and Amy Holmes, the anchor of Real News on The Blaze. So, Amy, you first. Did Clinton's op-ed surprise you at all?
Well, it didn't surprise me that President Clinton is a supporter of gay marriage. And in fact, back in 1996, a lot of observers thought that his defense of, quote unquote, traditional marriage was entirely political, particularly given his own rather flexible interpretation of the institution in his own personal life. But I think what is surprising and important is that a former president of the United States published this op-ed. I think it has real political import. Whether or not it will sway the Supreme Court, well, that's another matter.
So, Maria, as you know, the Obama administration has filed a brief pushing for Prop 8 to be overturned, so it's not maybe that unusual that a president might take a stand on a policy. But have we ever seen a sitting president do something like this, basically asking the Supreme Court to strike down a law that president signed?
Well, no, but I think if you look at the history of President Clinton, he is not one to basically break those kinds of traditions. He has been a very active and activist former president, one to make sure that he chimes in on public debate. The work that he has done on the Clinton Global Initiative has been incredibly impactful and groundbreaking on global issues such as education and poverty and health care. The role that he played in President Obama's reelection, I think, is also historic and one that you haven't seen a former president take on. So I do think this is par for the course for someone like President Clinton, and I do think that he is also worried about his legacy. He doesn't want a law like DOMA on the books being implemented because I think he truly believes that it is unconstitutional. And I think what he said smartly in his op-ed is he's not making the case that because he thinks it now should be overturned, that the Supreme Court should overturn it. But if they focus on the merits of the case at hand, they will need to find it unconstitutional because, frankly, it is.
So they will hear right now for the court, they're scheduled to hear these arguments on DOMA and Prop 8 later this month. Amy, you said it remains to be seen if Bill Clinton's opinion matters in the case. Should it matter, do you think?
Well, there are two separate issues. There's DOMA, which he signed into law, and his views of it, I think, are politically persuasive. But when it comes to Prop 8, that's a different question. And that has to do with California voters who voted to sort of defend traditional marriage, and the California Supreme Court that said that that was inconsistent with California's state constitution. So the Supreme Court will be deciding that. I don't think that Bill Clinton's views on Prop 8 should necessarily be appropriate, since that's a matter having to do with Californians. But when you look at DOMA as national policy, certainly the former president's views are important and interesting.
So we're talking, and I want to get this to the two of you, just real quick, if you could answer that. You know, you'd said that maybe it was politically motivated. Amy, I think you said this, that he signed this in the first place. Well, let's play sort of the role of the skeptic here. Could the timing here have anything to do with a Hillary Clinton run in 3 years? Maria, go.
No, not at all, Brianna. What are you talking about?
Amy,
no,
what do you think?
I think this is what Bill Clinton believes, period.
Okay, you think that's what he believes, period. What do you think, Amy?
I agree with Maria. It's also because we have a Supreme Court case coming up in just a week and a half, and President Clinton wants to weigh in on that debate. Whether or not it would help a Hillary Clinton run in 2016, you know, that remains to be seen. There are a lot of folks who feel very passionately on both sides of this issue. But I think Bill Clinton is actually maybe doing this for principled reasons. As much as I wouldn't want to believe that, I think that might be the case.
For his legacy. Okay,
wow.
So we're already talking. I like that you guys are agreeing.
Yeah,
I find this intriguing.
Exactly.
So while we're talking 2016, let's talk about a pretty important powwow that's happening this weekend in Florida. The RNC is holding their quarterly finance meeting. They have invited 5 big Republican names to speak. They are former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, Senator Marco Rubio, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, and Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. So, ladies, what do you think about this? You know, could this be a little bit of a preview of the 2016 GOP presidential field?
Well, I'm sure all of those gentlemen hope so, and that they would love for their names to be in contention for the Republican nomination in 2016. I think what's interesting about that lineup is that 4 of the 5 are politicians from blue states that President Obama won. And in the matter of Ted Cruz, he's a successful, you know, he just won, become a United States Senator from Texas with a growing Hispanic population. So I think that this lineup is intended to really sort of be the face of the new GOP moving into the future.
That's interesting. Maria, what do you think?
Well, I hope that they actually, if this is the face of the new GOP, they need to include some women in there. I mean, I hope that this isn't it in terms of the folks and the people that will actually put their names into consideration and that the party will consider. I think they need to focus on Nikki Haley. I think they should have Kelly Ayotte in there. But in terms of this lineup, you know, you have Jeb Bush, who has been talked about a 2016 contender. His rollout for his book was very rocky at best. You have Marco Rubio, who I think has been a very good leader on immigration, but his debut on the national spotlight, I think, you know, kind of left people thirsty, wanting for a little bit more from him, perhaps. And then you have Chris Christie, who, frankly, you know, conservatives have a real problem with him, though I think that he has a lot to teach the rest of the GOP in terms of how to win elections. So I think you still have a lot of questionable leadership qualities from all of these contenders, but you know, to their end, it is still early, so we'll see.
It is still early, and maybe that's what the women are doing, guys. They're playing it smart, and they're not getting in too soon. We'll see. Amy,
I like that.
Right?
Yes, I like that.
Amy Holmes and Maria Cardona, thanks for being with me.
Thanks, Brianna.
Well, he's the man behind TV's biggest hits, like 2.5 Men and The Big Bang Theory, which I rather enjoy. Up next, mega TV hitmaker Chuck Lorre joining me live from South by Southwest.
This one goes out to all the allergy muddlers. You know who you are. You can part a crowd without saying a word. You have yet to master the quiet sneeze.